Namaskar and welcome to Midday Prime. I'm Sakal Bhatt and today we are leading with India setting a record of sorts in universal COVID vaccine drive by administering at least 8.6 million doses. We will be keeping also an eye on the political developments in Kashmir and also in National Prime segment. We examine in detail the UNCTAD report hailing India's growth FDI inflow story amidst COVID hit economy. But first up on Midday Prime, here are the headlines. BJP lashes out at Congress and its leader Rahul Gandhi for playing politics over vaccination. BJP spokesperson Sambit Patra says that Congress should have known that rate of vaccination is at least in the states which are ruled by them. He also said whenever something good happens in the country, Rahul Gandhi gets irritated. A record 86,16,373 people vaccinated on day one of world's largest free vaccination campaign. Madhya Pradesh inoculates more than 15 lakh people, highest in the country, while Karnataka follows with more than 10 lakh jabs. In other news, India makes further progress in the fight to beat pandemic. Daily cases fall below 50,000 after 91 days, while active caseload declines to 6,62,521, less than 7 lakh after 79 days. Jammu and Kashmir National Conference leader Farooq Abdullah meets People's Alliance for Gupka Declaration leaders in the residence. Addressing media, Abdullah says he will meet Prime Minister Modi and present their stand before Prime Minister and Home Minister. In international news, US President Joe Biden announces the allocation plan for 55 million of pledged 80 million vaccine doses, approximately 16 million doses allocated to Asian countries. In Euro 2020, Netherlands, Austria, Belgium, Denmark advanced to round of 16. England and Croatia to play their final matches in Group D today. And we begin with the big news. BJP has lashed out at the Congress and its leader Rahul Gandhi for playing politics over vaccination. BJP spokesperson Sambit Patra has slammed Rahul Gandhi for misguiding through his virtual conference. Patra stated that despite the biggest vaccination drive in the country, it is Congress-ruled states that have lowest rate of vaccination, highest rate of mortality. Sambit Patra also advised opposition leader Rahul Gandhi to come out of his virtual world and see the reality of the Congress-ruled states.
इतना बड़ा ऐतिहासिक वैक्सीनेशन का पूरा प्रोसेस रहा, किन राज्यों में सर्वाधिक वैक्सीनेशन हुआ और किन राज्यों में सबसे कम न्यूनतम वैक्सीनेशन हुआ, अगर आप इन आंकड़ों को देखेंगे तो सर्वाधिक उन राज्यों में रहा है जिन राज्यों ने श्रृंखलाबद्ध तरीके से अनुशासन में रहकर बिना वैक्सीन हेजिटेशन के, मध्य प्रदेश हो, चाहे गुजरात हो, चाहे कर्नाटक हो, उन्होंने काम किया। और न्यूनतम किन में रहा है? कांग्रेस शासित राज्यों में न्यूनतम वैक्सीनेशन हुआ। सबसे ज्यादा फैटेलिटी कांग्रेस शासित राज्य में, सेकेंड वेव आरंभ होता है कांग्रेस शासित राज्य में, सर्वाधिक पॉजिटिविटी कांग्रेस शासित राज्य में, वैक्सीनेशन होता नहीं है कांग्रेस शासित राज्य में, और ऊपर से व्हाइट पेपर आप हमें दे रहे हैं। राहुल गांधी व्हाइट पेपर छाप करके, वर्चुअल में से निकल करके रियल में आप अपने राज्यों में जाइए और उन्हें ये आंकड़े दीजिए और उनसे कहिए कि आखिर ये क्या हो रहा।
Well, the big story, India has ramped up vaccination and the country is inoculating maximum number of population under the nationwide vaccination program. On Monday earlier, the country vaccinated as many as 86,16,373 people, of which 78,37,141 received their first dose, while 7,79,232 received their second dose. Meanwhile, a total of 28,87,66,201 vaccine doses have been administered in the country. And with this, India has administered close to 8.6 million vaccine doses against coronavirus in a single day, which is the highest ever single day number recorded in the world so far, as per the Union Health Ministry. And talking about Madhya Pradesh, giving the details about the vaccination, Madhya Pradesh Medical Education Minister Vishwas Sarang has said that as many as 16,95,592 COVID-19 vaccine doses were administered in the state, while the target was just 10 lakh.
मध्य प्रदेश में कल एक ही दिन में जो मोदी जी की सौगात है देश की जनता को, मुफ्त में वैक्सीन, उसको जनता ने स्वीकार किया और माननीय शिवराज सिंह चौहान जी के नेतृत्व में कल एक दिन में ही हमने 16,95,592 लोगों को वैक्सीन लगाई है। ये अपने आप में रिकॉर्ड है और हम सबको प्रसन्नता की बात है कि हमारा टारगेट तो 10 लाख का था, पर हमने 16,95,592 लोगों को वैक्सीन लगाई।
And coronavirus is very much around, but still many are least bothered about following protocol. My colleague Vishal Baristo, brings you this reality check report from Delhi's busy hub, Chandni Chowk.
I'm here inside the Chandni Chowk market, and we've seen how people, they have their callous attitude. Not many of them are putting on a mask. So let's talk to them and find out why they are not putting on a mask. Let's talk to some of them. I have a gentleman here. We'll talk to him now. As he sees, he's running away. भैया सुनो, क्या नाम है आपका? नाम क्या है?
अरे इनसे बात कीजिए।
मास्क क्यों नहीं लगा रखा आपने?
नहीं मास्क मैंने एक्चुअली लगा रखा है, पानी पीने गया था।
डर नहीं लग रहा आपको?
नहीं डर क्यों नहीं लग रहा है, डर का तो सवाल ही है।
फिर हाथ में लेके घूम रहे हो। You see, people are not putting it on safely. They are carrying just to show that they are carrying a mask, but they are actually not putting in. The moment they see us, they start running away. क्या नाम है आपका?
सर हमारा नाम विक्की है।
विक्की, आपको डर नहीं लगता तब भीड़ में मास्क नहीं लगा रखा आपने?
सॉरी सर।
और आपने भी हमें देख के लगाया, आपको डर नहीं लगता ऐसे?
लगता है गलती से वो नीचे हो गया, बात कर रहे थे इसलिए।
So there you see how people are really not concerned about this menace, this pandemic, and there you see lots and lots of them. It's quite a congested area. People, they are really not bothered why to take on a mask. Mask क्यों नहीं लगा रखा आपने? So the moment you ask them, they put on a mask. There you see, when we ask them why they are not putting on a mask, are they not scared? They'll show off their mask. But many, they are least bothered, and this is a big concern. We've seen how after the first wave people got relaxed and what happened in the second wave. We cannot let this happen, and we have to be very vigilant. So we have all to stand together unitedly in this fight against the coronavirus. With cameraman Anil, this is Vishal Baristo for DD India, Delhi.
So there is absolutely no room for complacency. And now let's shift focus to Maharashtra, where Maharashtra has launched a free vaccination for the age group of 18 plus in the state today. But despite a drop in the positivity rate, Mumbai continues to remain under stricter level 3 restrictions, according to the city's civic body, Brihad Mumbai Municipal Corporation. Under the level 3 restrictions, both essential and non-essential shops have been allowed to remain open till 4 p.m, while malls, theatres, multiplexes continue to remain closed. Only essential services staff and government staff are permitted to travel on suburban local trains, with districts with 10 to 20% positivity rate and 60 to 75% occupancy rate areas are marked for level 4 curbs, and areas having a positivity rate of 20% and above occupancy rate of 75% do not see any relaxations at all. Let me quickly go across to Mumbai, where my colleague Shama joins us for a quick live update. Shama, if you could hear me, a quick round of developments on ground. Very clearly, there is a dip in COVID numbers. It's a good sign, but it seems that the Brihad Mumbai Corporation is in no mood to let down the restrictions.
Right, Sakala. There are three things over here we are concerned about Maharashtra as a whole. First things first, the numbers have started coming down. The positive cases have started coming down, and it's been more than a week that the numbers of positive COVID cases have been reported below 10,000. So it's a good sign, but each district has been given this authority that their administration can take the decision whether to unlock it restriction phase by phase, or keep it in the level 1 or continue with the restrictions. So yes, as you rightly mentioned, that Mumbai continues to be in level 3. So restrictions will remain to be there. And apart from that, the second thing is that yesterday we did see the entire nation celebrating the vaccination drive, the mega vaccination drive, but Maharashtra had to wait a little longer. However, Maharashtra had begun since Saturday, that is 19th of June, the vaccination drive for 30 to 44, and from tomorrow Maharashtra is beginning the vaccination drive for 18 plus as well. So the entire age group for the vaccination has been covered, and it's we are hoping that many large number of people should be vaccinated as soon as possible, because each day Maharashtra is vaccinating close to 4 lakh people. The third thing is a matter of concern that Maharashtra has reported 21 cases of Delta variant COVID-19 virus, and more 7,500 samples have been sent for testing and genome sequencing. So Ratnagiri remains to be the worst affected. 9 cases from Ratnagiri. Then Jalgaon is behind that. Mumbai, Sindhudurg. These places have also reported Delta plus variant. So matter of concern, the state is doing the contact tracing. The travel history has been searched. So overall, the entire state is doing all they can to stop the Delta variant from spreading further, and hoping that these numbers which have come down, it should be in that pattern or should be more lesser in the coming days.
All right, Sharma continues to stay with us. A bit more, in fact, if you could share with our viewers about the Delta variant, though there is absolutely no need to panic, but you also mentioned, Sharma, that Ratnagiri seems to be the spot right now, right? A little bit more on that. What is the administration doing to ease out the situation and to inform people more about this new variant?
First things first, as we've heard the state health minister Rajesh Tope yesterday, he talked out how the entire procedure would happen. We've already mentioned that 7,500 samples since May 15 have been collected, and they've sent for testing. Also, more samples continue to be collected and sent for genome sequencing as well, to find out if there are more cases of Delta plus variant in the state. The Ratnagiri, the western parts of the state, the Ratnagiri area, Sindhudurg, then Mumbai, Palghar, Thane, and apart from that, Jalgaon also. Jalgaon is the second worst affected. As you rightly mentioned, there is no need to panic for now, but we know for the fact that these cases could be the best thing to do is the COVID. We should not panic. Apart from that, state government is doing all the contact tracing it can, so that more number of people who were in the contact of these people who have tested positive for the Delta plus variant could be contacted and could be traced, so that the spread can be stopped right over there and could not spread to other parts of the state.
Yes. Sharma, thank you for joining us. In fact, if you could just stay with us a little longer, I'm going to quickly go across to my colleague Aditya, who's also with us live on this broadcast. Aditya, a quick roundup. Well, it seems that Madhya Pradesh has reached or perhaps set a record of sorts in terms of inoculating more people vis-a-vis what was really targeted. So what's the situation on ground, and what are the reasons attributed to this success of sorts?
Yes, Sakal, yesterday was a historic day for Madhya Pradesh. Around 16 lakh 95,000, around 17 lakh doses administered in Madhya Pradesh in first for one-day Maha Abhiyan program. After the success of one-day Maha Abhiyan program, Government of Madhya Pradesh announced second phase of Maha Abhiyan vaccination program. It will held on 1st to 3rd July in Madhya Pradesh. Across the state, first Maha Abhiyan, all the cabinet ministers, all the ground level staff, make special arrangements for a Maha Abhiyan program. Especially today's in cabinet meeting, CM Shivraj Singh Chauhan congratulates to his cabinet ministers for doing a great job for Maha Abhiyan and achieving the target across around 17 lakh. CM Shivraj Singh Chauhan also said that this is also succeeds with the help of health workers, with the help of the eminent people who join in this campaign. Is the CM Shivraj Singh Chauhan also make a special campaign in social media also. So we can say in next Maha Abhiyan program, which will be for 3 days, the CM Shivraj Singh Chauhan make a special arrangement for those people who are left for the vaccination.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Aditya for joining us from Bhopal, and Shama for joining us from Mumbai, and for those quick updates. Thanks, both of you. And now let's move on and stay with the COVID update numbers. Now, India, as we mentioned earlier, has reported less than 50,000 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours. That's the good news. The country has reported 42,640 new cases, with active caseload declining to 6,62,521. Country's active caseload is less than 7 lakh after 79 days. Daily recoveries continue to outnumber daily new cases for the 4th consecutive day, and as many as 81,839 patients have recovered during the last 24 hours. So far, a total of 2,89,26,038 patients have recovered across the country. Recovery rate has increased to 96.49%. And the weekly positivity rate remains below 5% and is currently at 3.21%. Daily positivity rate too is below 5% for the 15th subsequent day and is now standing at 2.56%. And all this has been possible because India has substantially ramped up testing for COVID-19 in the country. And as per the Indian Council of Medical Research, as many as 16,64,360 samples were tested on Monday. So far, more than 39 crore 40,72,142 samples have been tested for COVID-19 across the country. My colleague Meghna now joins us for a quick update from Delhi. ICR numbers augur good news for the national capital. Not only national capital, Meghna, if you could hear me, but overall the positivity rate is going up. The mortality rate continues to fall. More on that, please. Meghna. Okay, we'll go to Meghna in a bit. Meanwhile, on Midday Prime, let's quickly move on to our next segment, that is Developing Story. And so Jammu and Kashmir's National Conference President and former Chief Minister Farooq Abdullah today met members of the People's Alliance for Gupkar Declaration at his residence in Gupkar Road in Srinagar. The meeting was convened ahead of the all-party meeting convened by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Thursday in the national capital. Addressing the media after today's meet, Farooq Abdullah said he will be attending the all-party meeting on Thursday to put forth his party's stand in the meeting. Farooq Abdullah is one amongst the 14 political leaders invited for the all-party meet on Thursday.
वज़ीर आज़म की तरफ से दावतनामा आया है और हम उस दावतनामे में जाने वाले हैं। वहाँ पे हमें उम्मीद है कि हम अपने जो मौक़िफ़ है उसको वहाँ पे वज़ीर आज़म साहब और होम मिनिस्टर साहब के सामने रखें।
PAGD is an alliance of 6 parties in Jammu and Kashmir, which includes the main 2 political outfits of the Kashmir Valley National Conference and the PDP. And Salman Qazi, my senior colleague, joining us from Srinagar to put this in perspective. Very quickly, Salman, what more are you picking up ahead of the Thursday's all-party meet? By the Prime Minister, and especially the reactions that you are picking up from NC and PDP camp.
I think there has been a wholehearted welcome from all political formations, especially NC and PDP. There was a meeting today that happened at the residence of Dr. Farooq Abdullah, where they decided eventually that every member who has been invited will be attending the meeting, and they said that they have not been informed about the agenda of the meeting, but they will be talking. They'll be talking and they'll be putting their own points across to the government of India and the Prime Minister and the Home Minister. is across the tribal. So basically, there was a meeting, and in which basically one of the biggest political formations, which includes National Conference and the PDP, which have a spectrum across the valley and in certain areas of Jammu also, have decided that they will be attending the meeting, and they will be coming, and basically every member who has been invited for the meeting will be attending the meeting.
What is the significance, the larger significance of this, the Gupkar declaration deciding to go ahead in terms of this adding more political stability to the political landscape of Jammu and Kashmir, the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir?
Yeah, absolutely. This will lead to, because there was this process could not have been suspended altogether. So I think this has to be restarted, and the government of India thinks that this is now the correct time, that the aims that they sought to achieve have been somewhat achieved, and further political gains could be achieved only by bringing other stakeholders in the form of the political parties in Jammu and Kashmir together. So this will also give them a good glimpse into what the leadership across the Jammu and Kashmir states, both in Jammu, in Kashmir and Ladakh, is thinking. What are their feedback? So I think this is seen as good by people on the ground. Obviously, there is always a cautious optimism. There is a kind of a cautious optimism on the ground about this meeting on 24th.
All right. Thank you very much, Salman Ghazi, for those quick updates. Thanks for joining us. And with that, let's quickly move on to the next segment, that is National Prime segment. India has received $64 billion in FDI, or foreign direct investment, in 2020. That's the fifth largest recipient of the inflows of investment in the world. This, according to the World Investment Report 2021, which was released on Monday by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, that is UNCTAD. Now, the UNCTAD report states that the second wave of COVID-19 in the country weighs heavily on the country's overall economic activities, but its strong fundamentals provide optimism for the medium term. The UNCTAD report mentioned that FDI in India rose 27% to $64 billion in 2020 from $51 billion in 2019. It also states that the global FDI flows have been severely hit because of the pandemic, and they plunged by 35% in 2020 to $1 trillion from $1.5 trillion the previous year. The World Investment Report 2021 also says global FDI flows are expected to bottom out in 2021 and recover some lost ground with an increase of 10% to 15%. All right, now let's take a look at some of these important observations made by the UNCTAD World Investment Report 2021. Global FDI flows have dropped by 35% to $1 trillion amidst pandemic times. It states FDI flows to developing countries in Asia has increased by 4% to $535 billion. Developing countries, including India, reflected resilience amid global FDI contraction. China, Hong Kong, India and United Arab Emirates defied global trend to register the FDI inflows. Also, FDI flows growth trajectory has been reported amidst pandemic hit economy of 2020. It further states FDI flows to developing countries in Asia was specifically led by 4 countries. FDI flows have increased by 4% to $535 billion, and the developing Asia, it also states, is the only region that has recorded this FDI growth curve. Developing Asia accounts for more than half of global inward and outward FDI flows as per the UNCTAD report, further stating that the FDI prospects in 2021 for Asia, this is important, are more favorable than global average. Recovery in trade, manufacturing activity, strong GDP growth forecast according to the UNCTAD report are the main drivers propelling these numbers. And within the region, FDI in South Asia particularly rose by 20% to $71 billion. According to the report, this rise in numbers is attributed to 27% rise in FDI in India to 64 billion. This report attributes these reasons to the robust investment in information and communications technology, particularly resulting for rise in India's FDI inflows. Also, the other reason attributed by the report is the robust investment in construction sector as well. Now, a bit of a comparison, it talks about how in China, FDI has rose to 6% to $149 billion in 2020. Hong Kong surging by 62% to $119 billion after a sharp fall of FDI earlier in 2019. Remember the third country's UAE, it says FDI in the UAE rose by 11% to $20 billion because of a significant acquisitions in energy sector in UAE. And it also talks about why FDI fell in other South Asian economies that actually specifically rely on export-oriented garment manufacturing. It also touches upon inflows in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka have contracted by 11% and 43%. So this was a quick one on the main observations or the main points, the big takeaways of this UNCTAD report released. Let's move on. Prime Minister Narendra Modi in a tweet also, in fact, of his LinkedIn post says that reforms by conviction and incentives, post on innovative policy making in the time of COVID-19, powered by the spirit of center-state bhagidari, basically the center-state partnership. Arun is with me online to put this in perspective. So a clear focus here being on the center-state bhagidari, center-state partnership propelling the reform story driven by conviction and incentives. Arun.
The cooperative federalism has played a significant role during the COVID pandemic time as well. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi clearly has highlighted this point, Sakal, that under the Atmanirbhar Bharat package that was announced in May 2020, government primarily announced that state government would be in a position to, primarily will be allowed to borrow in 2020-2021. Now, an extra 2% of the state GDP was allowed, of which 1% of which was made, on a condition that the state governments will roll out some reforms that are related to ease of doing business, ease of living. So primarily, the state governments were in a position to raise money or borrow the money, and even during the COVID pandemic time, when major big economies were struggling to borrow money, the state governments were in a position to borrow money. So this was a big highlight. Now, there were four reforms that were connected to all these points that played an important role. On one side, state could borrow more, and whatever borrowing was made, out of that borrowing, the borrowing was invested further in reforms in the state itself. The first reform that Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has talked about, it's about one nation, one ration card. We know this fact that now migrant laborers or primarily the poor people can take a ration from anywhere in the state, no matter where they are living, because of the fact that one nation, one ration card is moving in a direction for which the migrant laborers, the poor can take the ration. So the required infrastructure under the National Food Security Act, that was strengthened by the state governments, Aadhaar number of all the family members, and that of all the fair price shops had electronic point of sale devices. So all this infrastructure was, geared up during this COVID pandemic time. So whatever state governments did borrow, or partially the money was invested in upgrading this the infrastructure for one nation, one ration card. Second reform that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is talking about is of ease of doing business. Now, the second reform that aimed at improving ease of doing business primarily, this required states to ensure that primarily renewing of business-related license under the 7 Acts that were made automatic. So this gave a clear-cut signal that government is on a reform track. Government is yes.
Go ahead, Arun. Please finish your point.
That's what Sakal. So now the government has given a clear indication that there is a red carpet welcome for the business community, and of course 7 acts were made automatic and online and non-discretionary on mere payment of fees basis. That means it was easier for the business community, for the corporate sector, for registration, and of course for renewing their business-related licenses. So this was second reform that state governments were responsible for, and whatever money the state governments did borrow during the COVID pandemic time partially was again invested in this ease of doing business aspect. Third important reform that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is talking about is of course the ease of living for the citizens of our country. So the third reform primarily required the states to notify the floor rates of the property tax and of water and sewage charges. Now this is in line with the stamp duty guidelines and the value of the property. So in simple terms, primarily, more and more reforms were made as far as, the property taxes, the water taxes that were levied by the state government in line with the stamp duty. So this primarily gave an ease of living to the citizens of our country. It made simple for the citizens of our country as far as taxation, the property tax, the state, the property tax, the municipal tax is concerned. So that were primarily simplified that were made more and more user friendly. So this was the third important reform that the states were primarily able to do because of the fact that the kind of borrowings that they did, a partially amount was invested in these kind of reforms going forward. Last but not the least, it's about the direct benefit transfer. Now, this because of direct benefit transfer, we know this fact the kind of infrastructure that was erected before the COVID pandemic time. We have seen that how government ensured that the beneficiary can get the money directly in the account of the beneficiary. So all these reforms primarily ensure that how ease of living, ease of doing business can be ensured. Sakas?
All this revolving around the innovative policy making as mentioned by Honorable Prime Minister in that post. Thank you very much, Arun. That's all we have time for putting this in perspective and talking about the larger messaging through this post. In fact, Prime Minister Modi will be interacting with the participants of Toykathon 2021 on Thursday via video conferencing. Toykathon 2021 was jointly launched by the Ministry of Education, MSME Ministry, DPIIT, Textile Ministry, Information and Broadcasting Ministry and AICTE on 5th of January to crowdsource innovative toys and games ideas. Around 1.2 lakh participants from across the country have registered and they've submitted more than 17,000 ideas for Toykathon 2021, out of which 1,567 ideas have been shortlisted for the 3 days online grand finale, which will be held from 22nd of June to 24th. However, because of the COVID-19 restrictions, this grand finale will have teams with digital toy ideas, while a separate physical event will be organized for non-digital toy concepts. This event is aimed at boosting the toy industry in India to help it capture a wider share of the toy market. Let's go back to the top story that we are tracking for you, the FDI growth story and the main observations by the UNCTAD report recently released. On this edition of Midday Prime, we are joined by senior journalist and senior editor of Economic Times, Deepshikha here joining us. Deepshikha, good afternoon. And quickly to begin with, your thoughts on what we just, the big story that we broke a while back, Prime Minister tweeting not only on the LinkedIn profile, also basically the larger message of the cooperative federalism, the innovations in policy making, propelling India's reform-oriented growth story. Deepshikha.
So, two things here. We've seen the FDI really grow in the past year, despite that year being a washout year because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is a huge positive there. And if we take note of what Prime Minister said in his message, the message is very loud and clear. If you look at the FDI inflows into the country, and if you look at the measures that the government is proposing to take or has taken in the past, they definitely have, at the ground level, the implementation, the execution is in the hands of the states and the local bodies. So they have to be on board each and every reform to ensure that it really percolates to the last mile. So if you look at the single window which is there for the foreign investors, which includes, hand holding to the last mile, till the groundbreaking. So it has to involve even the local government, the local bodies, the state governments, so that there is no hurdle. And the idea is to have both the center and the state government on board to ensure that, we can lay this red carpet for investment and businesses to sort of flourish in the country. And that has borne results. We've seen FDI sort of grow. And also, FDI has seen the impact of the measures which have been taken by the government, the production-linked incentives, the ease of doing business, the initiatives which have been taken under Make in India to sort of encourage people to come and make here, produce here. So all these factors have sort of played on the reforms that have been taken, and they are resulting in large inflows into the country. And despite the fact that we had a very tough year, the inflows have risen. So it's a huge positive there.
Okay, and it also touches upon numbers and the kind of comparison. China, Hong Kong, UAE, India, and these sectors, Deepshika, if you could just explain that a bit, especially vis-a-vis India, which talks about good investments in particular sectors like construction, robust investments in these sectors leading to this.
So a number of sectors have seen, investment coming in, and huge, a large number of merger and acquisition deals, transactions happening. The sectors, which have been sort of receiving this attention from foreign investors are, information, technology, communication, and the tech space, basically. Healthcare has received a lot of focus, infrastructure sector, particularly construction, and also energy. Now, if you actually see, there is a production-linked incentive scheme already in place for, IT, telecom products, and there is a lot of hand-holding of investors happening on that front, and it has sort of borne fruits. So there is a huge jump in FDI in these sectors. Now, cross-border mergers and acquisitions, wherein your foreign investors sort of picking up stake in an Indian company, that also sort of surged by 83% to about 27 billion in the year under review. So all these factors have sort of played on getting and technology, health, infrastructure also, government has this national infrastructure pipeline. So a lot of measures have been taking place. In road sector, there was a huge focus, despite the disruption caused by pandemic. So there was some activity which was taking place in terms of, the new forms of contracts which were sort of brought in, asset monetization which is happening in the road sector. So all these factors have sort of played on to bring foreign investors here.
Thank you so much. We'll leave it there, Deepshika. Thank you so much, Deepshika, for joining us on Midday Prime on DD News. Thanks. Well, let's move on. In National Prime, Union Home Minister Amit Shah is on a two-day Gujarat visit. On the second day of his visit, the minister planted sapling at Sindhu Bhavan Road in Ahmedabad. Well, BJP National President JP Nadda today inaugurated a meeting of national office bearers of BJP Kisan Morcha at party headquarters in New Delhi. The office bearers will discuss various ways to inform people about pro-farmers policies of the central government. Senior party leaders like BL Santosh, who is also the General Secretary in charge of the organization, and Bhupinder Yadav will be also attending this meeting. The Jammu-Kashmir government has decided to cancel this year's annual pilgrimage of Amarnath Yatra due to the prevailing COVID-19 pandemic conditions. However, devotees can attend the morning and evening aarti online. Also, all the traditional religious rituals will be performed at the Holy Cave Shrine. As per the past practice, the decision was announced by Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha after discussions with the Sri Amarnath Shrine Board. The 56-day yatra was scheduled to begin from twin routes of Pahalgam and Baltil on 29th of June and finally culminate on 22nd of August. The pilgrimage was also cancelled last year because of the pandemic conditions. And on Midday Prime, it's time for the news and updates coming in from the world of business. And for Business Prime, my colleague Tanvi joins us with more Business Prime. Tanvi, over to you. Good afternoon.
Sakal, good afternoon. Well, up first in Business Prime, we are tracking the story where National Company Law Tribunal has approved the Kalrock Jalan Consortium's resolution plan for Jet Airways with riders. The Directorate General of Civil Aviation and Ministry of Civil Aviation have been given 90 days from June 22nd to allot slots to the airline. The Civil Aviation Regulator will make the final decision on allotment of slots. After Jet Airways was grounded in April 2019, its slots were allocated to other airlines. In October 2020, the Murarilal Jalan Kalrock Capital Alliance won the bid for Jet Airways, giving the defunct airline a chance to restart operations. And talking about the stock markets now, well, the domestic bourses have gained good ground so far on Tuesday. So the Sensex at the BSE had climbed 177 points or 0.3% to 52,752 in afternoon deals a short while ago. The Nifty at the National Stock Exchange had added 74 points or 0.5% to 15,821. The Jet Airways share price was locked in 5% upper circuit on June 22nd after the National Company Law Tribunal NCLT approved the Kalrock Jalan Consortium's resolution plan for the company with riders. In the broader market, the BSE mid-cap index jumped 0.8%, while the small-cap index surged 1.2%. If we talk about the top index gainers, they are Maruti Suzuki, UPL, Adani Ports and Shree Cements, with gains of between 2.9 and 5%. The top index losers so far are Bajaj Finance, Nestle, Asian Paints, Cipla, with losses of between 0.5 and 1.2%. Most other key Asian markets also rose on Tuesday as investors focused on prospects for post-pandemic economic growth rather than fret over the hawkish stance taken by the US Federal Reserve or central bank. So MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan advanced 0.4%. Japan's Nikkei 225 index jumped 3.1%. South Korea's Kospi rose 0.7%. And China's Shanghai Composite Index gained 0.8%. But Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index fell 0.3%. Back home at the interbank foreign exchange market, the rupee had depreciated 10 paise against the US dollar in opening trade on Tuesday. Later, the rupee lost further ground to lose 13 paise to 74 rupees 23 paise against the dollar in afternoon deals. At the multi-commodity exchange, gold had declined 148 rupees to 46,926 rupees per 10 grams. Silver also lost 262 rupees to 67,500 rupees per kilo. Union government has proposed several amendments in the Consumer Protection E-Commerce Rules 2020 to bring transparency and curb the prevalent unfair trade practices in the online marketing platforms. The government has shared a draft of the proposed amendments to the Consumer Protection E-Commerce Rules 2020 to protect the interests of consumers and encourage free and fair competition in the market. The proposed amendments also aim to further strengthen the regulatory regime. According to the proposed rules, the e-commerce platforms will need to appoint a chief compliance officer, a nodal officer, a resident grievance officer and other officials to ensure compliance with the provisions of the Act and the rules. It has been proposed to put in place a framework for registration of every e-commerce entity with the Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade for allotment of registration number. The government has also proposed prohibiting mis-selling, in which entities sell goods or services by misrepresenting information. The government has further clarified that conventional e-commerce flash sales are not banned, but specific flash sales or back-to-back sales which limit customer choice, increase prices, are not allowed. The centre has sought views and suggestions on these amendments till 6th of July. And finally, to update our viewers on the global energy market. Well, global crude oil prices rose on Tuesday, with Brent hitting $75 a barrel for the first time since April 2019. Oil rose as investors remained bullish about a quick recovery in global oil demand. So Brent crude climbed 26 cents or 0.4% to $75.16 a barrel. US crude gained 4 cents to $73.70 a barrel. So with that, it's a wrap on Business Prime. Sakal, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And from Business Prime, let's move on to World Prime. A quick look at what's making headlines internationally. External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar will be addressing the United Nations Security Council debate in Afghanistan today. Earlier, India had noted that the United States' decision to withdraw its troops from Afghanistan and has expressed concerns over the probable increase in the violence and targeted killings in the war-torn country. India has called for an immediate and comprehensive ceasefire. US President Joe Biden had announced that he would begin withdrawing US troops from Afghanistan on 1st of May, which now has been stated according to reports. Afghanistan has been marred by insurgency for the past several years, and an agreement was signed during the meeting between Taliban and US, which aimed at ending the conflict in the conflict-ridden region. My colleague Abhishek is joining us to put this forthcoming address by External Affairs Minister in perspective vis-a-vis developing situation on ground in Afghanistan. Abhishek, over to you. What more are you picking up? What's going to be India's standpoint there?
So Sakal, in today's address, the focus could be on the reconstruction work that is to be done for Afghanistan, because as we know that the war-ravaged country has been infrastructurally damaged to a great extent, and the world over countries are supporting in order to strengthen the basic infrastructural, both in terms of you see highways, dams, schools, hospitals, or any to sustain any normal living scenario. So what all India can do, what all United Nations can do, and what all the more economically powerful members of this organization can do in order to support and strengthen Afghanistan's development effort. That could be one of the focus area of our External Affairs Minister's address. Also, in the background to this today's conversation, there has been a regular conversation and dialogues going on between India also and other stakeholders who have an important role in the peace process of Afghanistan. India has always maintained that it supports a peace process that is Afghan-controlled, Afghan-owned, and this is how India is going to move ahead in any political situation that is going to emerge in Afghanistan, with due respect to the emerging reality that Taliban is also going to have some sort of stake in the upcoming political government. India is also coming to this reality, and there are reports that there are conversations going on that how to engage with Taliban, though there has not been any confirmation yet whether India has actually engaged with any Taliban official. But then there are leaning that if anywhere there will be a joint government in Afghanistan where all sort of political affiliation will be part of the government, then of course India will be in a process to engage with the new political dynamics of Afghanistan. So all these are the issues that External Affairs Minister could be focusing in today's address.
You know, and also to take this thought a little forward, India's larger role in the peace process in Afghanistan, despite the change of regime in US, B, India has always advocated peace and reconciliation in war-ravaged, trouble-torn, conflict-ridden Afghanistan. It has been at the receiving end of all this since many, many decades. There's a change in administration in US. Situation very volatile on ground in Afghanistan, and also now, in that light, EAM's address at the UNSC presenting India's standpoint, that is very, very important. World will be watching.
Of course, Sakal, see, India's point of perspective for Afghanistan's current scenario is whether Afghanistan will be a more sustainable and stable ecosystem because we know that as Taliban is growing, is going to have a more strong representation in Afghanistan's new emerging political dynamics, that can cause some worry for India, because Taliban in the past has been involved in so many supporting and abetting terrorism activities in India, and there has been proxy support from Taliban and related organizations in the past, and that is a point of worry for India. However, talking about the withdrawal of US troops, there has been mixed response to that, because for years people have been knowing that USA is going to withdraw its troops from Afghanistan, because seeing the reality, Afghanistan needed to have its own political scenario to sustain its a longer and civilized, civil government. But the way USA is withdrawing, and in the time USA is withdrawing, whether Taliban is actually getting more strong in Afghanistan in terms of military presence and in terms of more territorial captures, that is an area of concern for many neighboring countries also, whether Taliban will be in a very hefty position when it will come to negotiating the the total space that in government it can hold. So these are all the dynamics that we'll have to see how Taliban and Afghanistan's current government engages in talks further, and what could be India's takeaway in this whole process.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Abhishek, for joining us. Thanks. And staying with international news, US President Joe Biden has announced the allocation plan of 55 million of the pledged 80 million vaccines. Now, of the 55 million doses, 41 million doses will be shared by COVAX. The country will be sharing approximately 16 million doses of COVID vaccine in the month of June with Asian countries. And now this includes, besides India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Maldives, Bhutan, Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Laos, Papua New Guinea, Taiwan, Cambodia, Bhutan and the Pacific Islands will be getting these vaccines. Nearly 10 million doses of vaccines will be allocated for Africa to be shared with countries that will be selected in coordination with the African Union. President Biden said that he has promised that the US will be an arsenal of vaccines for the world. And in Brazil's deaths due to COVID-19 have surpassed 500,000 on Monday. It has now become the second country to pass 500,000 COVID-19 deaths after the United States. Hundreds of people in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro cities illuminated candles for those who died during the pandemic in the South American country. Protesters mourned the death and demanded the resignation of President Jair Bolsonaro over his mishandling of pandemic. Notably, only 11% of Brazilians have been fully vaccinated. Last week, new confirmed cases in Brazil accelerated to more than 70,000 per day on an average. And the Pentagon says that the US military could slow down its withdrawal from Afghanistan due to the gains made by the Taliban insurgents. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby has stressed that President Joe Biden's deadline of a full withdrawal of troops by September, that is something that remains in place, but added that the pace could be adjusted based on conditions. Pentagon officials said last week that the withdrawal ordered by Biden in April after nearly 2 decades fighting Al-Qaeda and helping government forces battle Taliban is around half completed. But at the time of Biden's order, around 2,500 US troops and 16,000 contractors, mostly US citizens, were in the country. The Pentagon has already turned over several of its key bases to government security forces and has removed hundreds of cargo plane loads of equipment. The First Lady of Brazil, Michelle Bolsonaro, attended an event organized by the Indian Mission in Brazil to celebrate International Day of Yoga 2021. In an address, she said yoga provides a holistic approach to health and well-being and is now becoming a world heritage as it continues to widely be practiced all over the world.
This United Nations resolution recognizes that yoga provides a holistic approach to human health and well-being.
And now let's take a quick look at sports updates coming in around the world. And on Sports Prime, let's quickly go across to Deepika joining us for more. Deepika, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sakal. Let's take a quick look at all the sports happenings from around the world. And to start with, a good news for fans. India's Tejinder Singh Toor, the reigning Asian Games champion in men's shot put, has qualified for Tokyo Olympics with a nation record throw of 21.49 meters in the Indian Grand Prix 4 at Patiala. Toor's performance of 21.49 meters, a national record, bettered the Asian record of 21.13 meters as well as the qualifying mark of 21.10 meters. The 26-year-old's previous best was 20.92 meters. He is the 11th Indian to qualify for Olympics in track and field. Toor sealed the Olympic berth with his opening throw of 21.49 meters.
मैं लास्ट ईयर भी बहुत था, 22 मीटर फेंक रहा था, फिर उसके बाद मेरे इंजरीज आ गई, फ्रैक्चर हो गया, बिल्कुल थ्रो जीरो हो गई मेरी, फिर से अभी बॉडी लाइन पर आई, फिर कंपटीशन कैंसिल होने लगे, अभी फरवरी में जाना था हमने, फिर एक अभी जून में जाना था वो भी कैंसिल हो गया, बड़ी मुश्किल से कंपटीशन मिला और अच्छा हुआ आज.
In Euro 2020, Belgium secures win in all three group games for the first time with a battling 2-0 victory that left Finland's hopes of qualifying for the last 16. Own goal from Finland's keeper Lucas at the 74th minute of the match hampered their dream of last 16 before Romelu Lukaku drilled a second. In another match of Group B, Finland slipped a place down to third by virtue of Denmark's 4-1 win over Russia, as they have to wait a little more to qualify as one of the four best third-place teams. Damsgaard scored the first goal of the match in the first half. Rest of the goal work came in the second half from Poulsen, Christensen and Maheli for Denmark, while Zuber got success to notch the only goal for Finland. The Danes go on to face Wales on Saturday in Amsterdam. In a short while, India will face New Zealand on the fifth day of ongoing World Test Championship final. Earlier on the day 4, persistent rain allowed no play throughout the day, leaving India and New Zealand at a maximum of 196 overs, including the reserve day. To identify an outright winner, New Zealand were 116 behind India's first innings score of 217 with 8 wickets in hand. In case of a draw, the inaugural WTC will have joint winners who will share the award money as well as the trophy. The degree of difficulty of batting on this pitch still leaves the teams a chance to claim the win. And that's all in sports. Over to you, Sakal.
Thank you so much, Deepika, for those quick updates in Sports Prime. And with that, it's time to wrap up this edition of Midday Prime. On the other side, my colleague Ashwini and Amritpal are going to be joining you with a live phone-in program, Doctors Speak on COVID-19. Stay with us. Namaskar.